Welcome back to the Milwaukee Show, and today we are talking about the Tampa Bay Lightning, a team that I don't know what path they are going down. This is a team that is confusing me. They are currently 16th in the NHL. If you can tell, that is a 6, as I suck at drawing. That is the 16th in the NHL, 37 points, 16, 13, and 5 is their current record. And they are right now third place in the wild card race in the East, but there's just 1 point behind the Florida Panthers for third place in the Atlantic. So they're in the mix, right? They're in the picture for the playoffs, but they're not quite in there. It's not a lock that they're going to get in, but not really for a lot of teams. So they're in the race for the playoffs, but they're not in a solid position, which is a strange place. Well, not really that strange, as they've been kind of iffy the last couple of years when it comes to the actual playoff race. But I still think they probably can pull off the playoffs this season, as they are right now 5th in goals for, and they were hindered this year at the beginning of the year with being 3rd in goals against as well. So they're really good at scoring goals. I mean, they're third. They're the 5th best at actually scoring points in games. That They are third when it comes to being scored on. They're only 11 goals shy of the San Jose Sharks. Now, that was hindered by their beginning of the season, not starting with Andrei Vasilevsky and some injuries and stuff going on. So they were hindered by that, and they're climbing back from that. But still, they have been slowed down to start this year, and they are, the numbers, the stats are what they are, and they're currently not very good at keeping the puck out of their net, which is not surprising because their defensive core is not the most outstanding. But that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is this team. What is going on here? What is the plan going forward? Because this team is far from bad, right? And you can see what I did there. Far is far from bad. This team is far from being a bad team by any ways. I mean, they're 16th NHL, so if anything you want to call them, the worst thing you could say is that they're mid. But they are not a bad team. They still have a lot of good players. In fact, the highest scoring player in the NHL right now, I'm sure as you know, because the whole talk about underrated players, Nikita Kucherov is currently leading the league with points, right? And there's other players on this team like Braden Point, Stamkos, who was the main point of this video, that still put up a lot of points. Victor Hedman freaking in the 30s of points as a defenseman. This team is stacked still. They've lost some of their depth over the last couple of years, but they are still such a good team, especially when it comes to their highs. They still got so many good players. But they might be far from bad, but they are far from a Stanley Cup again. They are far from winning a conference division, right? They're far from winning a division, especially the Atlantic division, right? So what is the plan going forward with this team, right? Now, a lot of teams, say like a team like Pittsburgh, I guess are happy to just kind of drift off into the sunset and mismanage their team so poorly that they are going to be in a hellscape for the next decade I see coming up soon. And a team like the San Jose Sharks are now going to be bad for a very long time after being very well managed, and then the guy lost his mind and now they have an idiot as a GM and this team is not getting any better. But Tampa Bay is run very well. This has been one of the best, maybe the best managed team, at least over the last at least decade. One of the best managed teams over, I would say the last decade has been the Tampa Bay Lightning. And they are not a dumb team, right? And obviously they're going to make the moves that they need to make to keep them in the smart direction. And with the current talks of Steven Stamkos, well, not very current, but the dealings with Steven Stamkos over the summer and still going on, that he's not been offered or even talked about a contract with the team, is that they're probably going to let him go, which is bizarre, because not only is he their longtime captain, he's one of the most acquainted with people of all time with a franchise, the Stamkos and the Lightning, and they're just going to let him walk, even though he is far from falling off a cliff. The guy is only 33 years old. He's well above still a point per game over the last few seasons. Not even was it a case like last year he kind of fell off and this year he's back on track. He has always been on track as over a point per game player. And it is probably, I don't know if it's a smart move or not. I know I wrote it on the board that I said it's a smart move to not keep him around on the team. But this team is not going anywhere else. It's not like a case where like one guy leaves this team and they've like lost their star player, right? It's not like they're departing from their main guy. He is not even their main guy. I would Kucherov and then Hedman and then maybe Stamkos if you wouldn't put Braden Point above him. And they are most likely just going to let him walk, which is an interesting move because this team is still in a winning window. Like, they are still in a playoff race and with some of the top players still scoring the most points. With Kucherov and Point and Hagel, like, this team is still loaded. And the team, like I said, they are a smartly ran team, right? This is not an idiotic team that just doesn't know what the hell they're doing with themselves, right? This is a well-managed machine in the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they know what they're doing. They signed their guys, Kucherov, till 2027. Braden Point is signed to 2030. And then you get to the guys that they recently signed, like Hagel and Cirelli, Sergachev, are all signed to like 2031 or 32. Like, they have long-term deals to their good players, right? It's definitely, they were not planning on falling off a cliff, right, and going into a rebuild because they just literally haven't. And this team feels like if they start moving on away from guys like Steven Stamkos, right, if they move on guys like Stamkos and they have guys like Nick Paul instead in the lineup in the top six, and they trade for, they give away everything to get a guy like Tanner Jeannot, it makes you wonder, it's like, what is this team building towards? Because it's not like they bring in Tanner Jeannot expecting him to take over Stamkos' spot. That's not going to happen. Nick Paul is not that kind of guy either, and his paycheck shows that. Stamkos is still a top-end, high goal-scoring player, and they are moving away from him. So what is the plan here, right? Because they've still got their top guys signed. So is it a more of a retool that they're going for? Because right now, with the cap rise that is expected to get to $87.7 million this up next season, currently the Tampa Bay Lightning are spending about 75 something or other $1 million. So currently, if things are like EA's NHL games, and you know everything is set in stone, they are at $12.585 million in cap space for next season. And that is with losses of like all their fourth line, Steven Stamkos, and somebody else that I can't really put my finger on now. And so they've still got like plenty of team left, but they're losing out on some important players, right? $12.85 million is not a ton of money, especially if they go for a retool. Because who do they bring in instead, right? Because with a retool, like currently the issues are that they're being scored on a lot, so defense, I guess, is one thing, and depth, I would say, especially going into next season. Right now, I am not a big fan of Tampa's defense. I mean, Hedman is absolutely insane. Sergachev is, I really like Mikhail Sergachev, and Cernak is great, but the other three, and sometimes like guys like Cernak are not like the very best defenseman in the world. It makes you go like, okay, maybe they need to, I mean, their offense is fine, but defensively they need to fill in some of those holes, and Vasilevsky's incredible. Once they make it to the playoffs, they're fine, but they need some help on being scored on, right? And I would say they need to go out and get someone like a good, solid defender to make that top four really resilient, and maybe even a fifth guy to really just solidify that whole core. And you got to assume, like, if, say, like a guy like a Noah Hannafin is their solution there, right? They go out for a Noah Hannafin, or they go out for a Chris Tanev, right? Maybe the hell they trade for him, right? That is a lot of that cap space gone immediately from those two guys. Then they sign a guy like Steven Stamkos, right? And maybe that's the move. Maybe the play is that it's like 12.85 and they can split it between Stamkos and two defensemen. But then they're left with they have to pay league minimum for the fourth line, right? And they just got to hope that line never needs to go on the ice, because they can roll the three lines and solidify their defense. That would be the move. But how do they do that, right? Because you'd have to go for free agents. Because when it comes to trade assets, this team has none. Like, when it comes to first-round picks, this year's is gone, next year's is gone. They finally have one in 3 years from now, which they could sell away, but they don't have much else to back that up. They don't really have any real rookies or anyone to give away as well. So they trade assets are very little. So when it comes to the trade deadlines, they're not going to be fantastic. So it's going to be all about free agency. And I think it's an interesting move because this team is still in a window because this team isn't going to just go into mid mode, right? Because every like site I see and I read, they go that the Lightning are more likely to be closer to a rebuild than a Stanley Cup, which I would say is true. But if that is true, they've signed long term a lot of their star players, and they are still gonna want to win. And Tampa's not a team that just like is like, oh, we're just gonna settle with what we got, right? They won back-to-back Stanley Cups, have been in the finals like 5 times, not 5, like 4 times in the last like 8 years or whatever that number is. This team wants to win, right? They want to go all the way. I don't know. I don't know how they go. I think free agency is the only way they go about it, and that is hoping that they can keep their players and a guy like Stamkos doesn't walk. Because you can't go out and sign a guy like Lindholm, right? You can't sign Elias Lindholm because he's going to be wanting at least, like, what, $8 million for his services, and that's all that money gone. You got to bank on a guy like Stamkos taking, like the speculation of, like, a 3-year deal for, like, try to get him at like a $4 or $5 million. If you can do like 4 or 5 and then get like another $4 or $5 million solid defenseman in the back end, I think that maybe puts them up, but then the depth is still missing. Because remember the days when they had Blake Coleman and Andre Palat and just down the lineup. They don't have that anymore. They are not as good as a team like the Golden Knights. They're not as good as the Avalanche. They're not as good as the New York Rangers. So I don't know. I don't know where this team goes from here. They are not a team to just sit back and go like we're going to. They go for the Hail Marys, even in a trade as simple as Tanner Jeannot's. So really, this video is just me questioning things. I don't know what this team is going to do. I look at a team like the Penguins over the summer and I go, this team is just idiots, right? I know what they're trying to do. They're going to suck at it. They can't win the Stanley Cup, and they're just furthering their hell that they're going to fall into. Tampa Bay, they are still good, and they're not like getting rid of things to try to be bad, and they're not really, and they can't really add things to be good. They're just kind of stalling and slowly falling. So I don't know. It's just more of a. This is more of a confusion video, really. So, anyways, if you've made it this far for some reason, thank you for watching this. I'm begging you, please pick up your free subscription down below. And until next time, too sweet, have an amazing day, and ta-ta for now.